what they came for. We gon' take it up from last year. Shoot on my shot, boy, I'm long range. Me and the team on the same thing. Stayed down, never switched up. Only thing changed was the game. I'm in the zone now. Nothing can change what we on now. When I pull up, know it's going down. Foot on the gas, ain't no slowing down. Aiming for greatness, no settling. Kick down the doors, they won't let me in. Taking no L's, yeah, I gotta win. Watch me kick down the doors, they won't let me in. Who running the game now? Foot on the gas, can slow down. No, my team, we holding it down. We know we running it now. Watch the game change. Watch the game change. Watch the game change. Watch the game change, yeah. Watch the game change. Watch the game change. Watch the game change. Watch the game change. I do not gamble, but bet on me. Tell them that's like, yeah, it's still la vie. I'm taking a shot for my enemies. I can't waste no more time on my energy. I know they not got it on lock. Go against me, that's a long shot. Cause I'm counting wins all around the clock. Never doubt me, boy, I don't stop. Who do you feel when they make you the monster? I am not scared of none of you imposters. Taking the lead now while they watching. Think you should leave now while the option. Taking no L's, yeah, I gotta win. Watch me kick down the doors, they won't let me in. I'm running the game now. Foot on the gas, can slow down, no.
Welcome to another edition of the It's Cavalier podcast. It's your boy Mack, and joining me today is my good friend Spencer Davies of Cleveland Cavaliers on SI. How you doing, man?
Great, man. You got upgrades. I was like, wow, watching that intro, I was like, damn, man, this is pretty nice.
It's a little bit too long for some people's liking, but it gives me an opportunity to set shit up before, just in case I'm lagging behind. But man, I have just been so excited and exhilarated at times this year watching this team play, even in games like against OKC where all hope seems lost when they're just getting their asses handed to them. It's just felt like such a refreshing season, seeing everybody pitch in here and there. But just getting to the midway point of the season, if you had to throw a grade on what you have seen so far from Kenny Atkinson and company, what would it be in terms of a letter grade?
I mean, it has to be an A or an up, right? You look at how he's managed the rotations, the allocation of the minutes, the allocations of the shot attempts, the way that he's experimented this year too with different groupings and combinations. I think you can't give him anything less than an A, right? And he's on top of the league right now as the Cavs are sitting there with 6 losses halfway through the season. We're almost getting to the All-Star break. There's no way you would have predicted this. Even he would have predicted this. He was talking about how, letdown games happen all the time, but the maturity of his group has just been something different that he hasn't seen before. Like at this point of the year, you'd probably have like 6, 7, 8 letdown games. I'd say only like 2 or 3 of those losses were like quote unquote letdowns. And the letdowns usually come against lesser opponents. But the thing about the Cavs is that they play the same against everybody. They don't take anyone lightly, and they certainly don't back down from any challenges. So that accompanied with his ability to adapt in game to different styles, throw in 2-3 zones on defense when man-to-man isn't working, having guys do different things like out of their comfort zone and allowing them to make mistakes. As a coach, I don't think you can ask for anything more.
I mean, the most exciting thing to me is just everybody not being overly taxed this early into the season, right? Donovan Mitchell leads the way. He's only playing 31.2 minutes per game, and you only have 3 players averaging over 30. Everybody is getting in on the action. And as you pointed out, they haven't often been the victims of what we call trap games, right? They come to play each and every time they're out there. Their play style doesn't typically change. They adapt and they adjust where they need to. And Kenny Atkinson is at the forefront of that. But I have to ask, man, it's been on everybody's minds and it's part of the podcast description. So I'm just going to kick it off with this. What's going on with Evan Mobley, Caris LeVert, and Isaac Okoro, and should we be worried about the recent absences?
So with Evan and Isaac particularly, that was asked of Kenny last game, and Evan, apparently it turned from soreness into an actual strain.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a calf strain, but Kenny just said he doesn't think it's anything serious, and Steven Spiro, the Cavs lead trainer, told him that. So I don't think it's anything to really be concerned about. It's a day-to-day thing. I think they're being a little overly cautious too, knowing what schedule lies ahead. It's going to be really tough here to close the first half of the season, and then when March comes around, it's going to be an absolute beast being on the road for the majority of that month. So taking a look at that, I think they're just kind of like, we can afford to have him miss a couple of games and make sure that he's 100%. With Isaac, it's a little different. It's his shooting shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
When Ben Simmons screened him in Brooklyn, that kind of made it sting. And you obviously saw when Isaac was shooting the ball, I think he only made 2 or 3 threes out of like 20-something attempts.
Yeah, it's noticeable, and it looks painful to watch.
Yeah, and it sucks because it feels like anytime Isaac gets momentum, it's one of those things where something has to go wrong to where he's not playing again or his role changes or something like that. And it's been like this like for 4 years now, like with him. And it's not fair because he was shooting at a 40% clip. He was playing great defense. Kenny was using him in inverted pick and rolls, and he likened him to like a Bruce Brown type, kind of being that 6'5" guard that sets screens but plays bigger than his size. And he was really thriving in that role when he was coming off the bench or when he was starting too. Don't forget that. So it's just kind of crappy to see that happen. And now that you have Max Strus back in the fold, you have a logjam at that 2/3. It's going to be hard to get him back in there at the way he was earlier in the season. And hopefully Isaac just kind of gets healthy, make sure that that shoulder gets right. Still playing really good defense, still running the floor well, but the finishing wasn't there and the three-point shot wasn't there. So Evan and Isaac, that's what I saw there and heard from about that. Caris with the wrist injury, not sure when that happened. Maybe it was a couple games ago, but he was a late add to the injury report on Monday against Phoenix. Went from questionable to out very quickly, and then obviously going into Houston on Wednesday will be listed as questionable and probably something like a game time decision going through shoot around. So that's what I got on those 3.
Okay, fair enough. We've seen small injuries pop up over the last couple of seasons for the Cavaliers, some nagging things. I know with Isaac, it took Dean a long time to come back from that, or at least look like his normal self in terms of the shot making. And it just sucks to see him go through that because he was really starting to come alive in terms of the way that they were utilizing him. And especially the 3-point percentage is what everybody was wanting to see from Isaac. And he was shooting damn near 50% before that injury. And now he's going slumping, and it's understandable because of the pain associated with the type of injury like that. With Caris, I think a lot of people have been skeptical because of the trade deadline coming up and whether or not, they might be being cautious with him and keeping him healthy, but who knows? And I guess that kind of leads me to my next question, and that is where you stand on all these hypothetical rumors surrounding one Cam Johnson.
So I think you have to be really delicate with the temperature of the locker room in this situation. And it sounds like an easy out. It sounds like, oh, you are looking at the power of friendship versus winning a championship. And that's not always the case. If there's anything you've seen to this point that makes you think that they're not a playoff team, please tell me. That is, and that they're not a championship contender, please tell me.
And
if it's because they lost 6 games, they lost 6 games, 2 of which against the same team that has also beaten the Celtics twice, who has also beaten other contenders, gave New York a hell of a run for their money the other night at the Garden. Like, if that's the reason that you make a trade for Cam, please tell me. If OKC wiping the floor with the Cavs at home after probably the best game of the season a week beforehand is the reason you don't think they're a championship contender, by all means. Now, this is my opinion. The locker room itself, they know they have to be better in bigger games. Kenny Atkinson said as much. They've been more critical of themselves than probably the outside has because they know what's at stake. They understand that there's unfinished business and that they have bigger goals in mind. They always downplay the record and all that stuff. But I'm here to defend them. Like, there is no way if you watch this team that you think this is the same squad from the last couple of years. 0%.
Oh,
this
absolutely.
This is not a one-dimensional offense. This is an offense that can beat you in multiple ways, whether it's from the outside, whether it's in pick-and-roll situations, whether it's the regular pick-and-roll 1-5, or an inverted pick-and-roll where Evan Mobley is the one that's handling the ball and someone else is setting a screen that's smaller. There are driving kicks. There are transition opportunities like no other. They turn you over. They take care of the basketball. They got to get better at rebounding. I'll give you that.
Yeah.
But there are very little indications that this is the same team that we've seen the last couple of years. And saying anything else is disingenuous because they are multifaceted, multidimensional, and beat you in a number of different ways. And I'd say that's playing guys 1 through 12, 1 through 13, whatever Kenny goes to on that particular night and who is available.
I think you could legitimately make an argument that as presently constructed, they can contend for a title. But these are the conversations that people often have surrounding whether or not a team in the state that the Cavaliers are in often centers around what is that next piece? What is that piece that is going to push them from what a lot of people still believe to be fringe title contenders to full-blown title contenders, as if they weren't already, in our opinions, right? But I think when we hear names like Cam Johnson or DeAndre Hunter or Rui in some cases for some people, it always comes back to, is this piece going to disrupt the chemistry, for one? And two, is it going to be enough to put them over? And I am at a place right now where, frankly, I would not mind seeing Cam Johnson suit up in wine and gold, but it all boiled down to what the cost would be. And for what the Cavaliers can actually offer, I just do not see Brooklyn being interested. I know there's a lot of rumors going around that any trade potentially surrounding Johnson would have to include Jalen Tyson, who just had a phenomenal game the other night, by the way. But I just don't think that we could really field or offer something that Brooklyn is going to be enticed enough to accept. I think they can get a better offer.
That's a really good point. And you also have to think about a Cam Johnson deal would have to be a 3-for-1.
Yes.
And you would be losing your depth. And you would also, if you had to go get Cam Johnson, you'd have to get a third team involved or make some sort of multi-team trade, which Kobe Altman has done in the past. So I'm not going to say he can't. But in 3-for-1 deal, I don't know, I'd be skeptical of that. If they make that move, then they clearly are going to try to push their chips in this year. But you mentioned it, Jalen Tyson with this new CBA and the aprons is a really solid piece to have, considering he could be a rotational player by next year.
And he's
or even
contract
in the second half of the season.
You got him cheap.
Exactly. So you think of it from that lens. I was also listening to Bobby Marks on Kevin O'Connor's show yesterday, talking about Cam Johnson and the Cavaliers rumors and stuff. It's more about, it's not Cam Johnson, what he makes in salary. It's about the bonus he makes that counts against the apron. It's $4.5 million. So it's not just the $20 to $22 million he makes annually. It's also that $4.5 million on top of it in bonuses that would count against the Cavs in the apron and then put them into the next echelon. So there's that. And this isn't even talking about just, as I said, the temperature of the locker room, how close these guys are. They know who they're sacrificing for. They are willing to sacrifice for each other. They trust each other. And first and foremost, they love each other, man. Like, I am in that locker room after every game, and it's been a blast this year. I've never seen so many different personalities just kind of flow and mix together. And the constant, you see all the stuff that I post on X. Like
these guys are vibing, man. They're hyping in that locker room.
They're vibing. I would put it would be the Cavs, it would be OKC, and probably Memphis, as I would say the healthiest locker rooms in basketball. And there's just this positivity that just reigns out, unless, they're being critical of themselves, which they have a really good feel of when to have fun and when to be serious. And that, I think, trickles down from Donovan, because Donovan is so even-keeled. Kenny Atkinson is so even-keeled. You got guys like George and Max who are not as even-keeled as those guys and you're very perfectionist-like. Yes, exactly. George is not straight business, by the way. That guy has a good time, and he will joke with you, and he will be as much of an instigator as anybody in that locker room. But
you need that. You need that in your locker room.
You do. You need that mixture of personalities. Like, you could just go straight through the list and talk about how different these guys are, but they are so close to each other. They've been together for a number of years now, And that makes a difference. This isn't a game of 2K where you can just take guys out and bring somebody new in and they can just fit right in on the court or fit right in the locker room. It takes time if you're going to do that. Also, you have to look at that perspective. If Cam Johnson were to come into the fold and be on the floor, it would take him time to get used to this type of basketball, this Kenny Atkinson system. Is he tailor-made for it? Sure. But would you see those results right away? You saw it with Max Strus when he came back from his injury. It was just really tough for him to get into a groove the first few games.
Yeah.
And then, it just kind of picks up from there. I know I'm kind of going in circles here, and I like Cam Johnson. Cam Johnson was one of the first people that I interviewed at, not one of my first people, one of the first draft prospects that I interviewed at the NBA Draft Combine a long time ago in Chicago. Really nice guy, obviously very talented, can shoot the heck out of the ball, good in transition, plays good defense. If he were to be in Cleveland, it would probably be something like his role in Phoenix, where he wasn't like the third guy. He was more like the fifth or sixth guy. He probably would fit in great here. But you have to weigh the pros and the cons of this. And when you talk about LeVert and how he's been involved in these trade rumors and whatnot, I think that's a huge piece of this team too. Like, he is so versatile in the roles he's able to play. Kenny has gotten his shot profile to become as efficient as it's ever been.
Either at the rim or a three. That's it, man.
He has been settling a little bit more for the mid-rangers as of late, but that's because that's what he knows. That's his habits. But defensively, you can put him on anybody. He's been just absolutely the engine of the bench. Him, George, Ty Jerome, Max in pinches. Like, this is a team that if you break that up, then you're going to have to find new lineups. You're going to have to find new rotations and combinations. And you mentioned, DeAndre Hunter. Like, these aren't guys that I think that wouldn't fit here. I'm just saying, if you're Kobe Altman, you have to think long and hard about who's going out, who's coming in, and figuring out different ways to add. And you've seen in the past too, they usually go to the buyout market. They went to Marcus Morris last year. The year before that, they went to Danny Green. Maybe that's the route they go this year. And, they do that with another backup big that everyone's clamoring for too. In case they face the beefy guys, but to be honest, the beefy guys are
for Larry Nance Jr. is what I'm crossing my fingers for.
Well, I feel like that would be a good fit, obviously, but I feel like people are looking at like if they see like someone the size of Embiid or like one of those bigger centers that are kind of not becoming obsolete, but you're seeing less of. Maybe someone who's a little younger, a little bit more athletic, but I don't know. You have different things you can think about, but these are really nitpicky things that we're looking at because, sorry, I know I'm getting on my rant, but you get me going, man. You get me going. It's funny to me that it's a need, one of these wings like Cam Johnson and DeAndre Hunter, because halfway through a season, you've only played 3 or 4 teams that have wings and athletic players and guys who can get to the rim and make it really difficult you on defense. Only 3 or 4 teams in the NBA have those, right?
Well, I guess that leads me to my next question.
That's the real thing.
Do you buy into the school of thought that the Cavaliers struggle against teams with Ranger wings?
That's perfect that you have that set up for me because I just think this is the biggest misconception ever. You think literally that 3 or 4 teams in the NBA have that? Did they not just go into Minnesota and smack them dudes up? Man, is Minnesota not a long team?
You got
Toronto
like
is Toronto not a long team?
All of these teams, yes, they're long, and the Cavaliers have ways of getting around that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The majority of the time, the Cavs have lost games, with maybe a couple of them that are an exception, is that they've turned the ball over. They've really had their own issues, and I'm not saying that that's not something that they can get better at. But I just think it's just disingenuous to say that halfway through a season that they haven't played teams that are long and athletic because the NBA is littered literally with those types of players. This is 2025. It's a faster paced game. Guys are jumping out the gym and they're able to do a lot of different things. Everyone is positionless. So no, the Hawks and the Celtics and the Pacers, those aren't the only teams that have length. Everyone in the NBA has length and strength. Get me out of that train of thought. Now, the way you beat that And I think that Kenny Atkinson has found a good way for this is you need to have another person be able to handle and play make other than Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell. Evan Mobley's done it, and he's done it well and gotten better at it, but it's
saw
not
Max
his
do it
prime.
the other night.
We did, and that's a good example. Max, Caris, those guys can do it, but can they do it consistently, and can they do it the right way without turning it over? That is where Ty Jerome comes into the picture. Ty Jerome is that guy to alleviate the pressure off of Donovan and Darius. And also Donovan and Darius recognizing that they can hit Jarrett or Evan over the top if they get doubled or blitzed. And then they can play make right there from the middle, pass it out to the corners, or go ahead and make a read from there in a split second, which they're pretty good at doing. So I think Ty Jerome's the big key, though, because they get the ball to Ty Jerome, and Ty Jerome's on the floor with both of them or just one of them. He is able to be your primary playmaker. He's able to pass it, swing it, drive, get to the paint. I like to refer to him as a catalyst of that second unit, and mix him in with one of the guards or both of the guards. That's a lot of decisions you have to make as a defense because he's been so good as a shooter. He's been so good as a passer, especially in the pocket, and making good decisions and not being afraid to be aggressive, which this team's needs sometimes to get into the paint after the starters don't quite have the juice that you're supposed to have coming out of the gate.
Ty Jerome, to me, even in lineups with both the guards, which I know people don't love 3-guard lineups these days, but one of the things that I love about it is that he gets Darius and Donovan off-ball opportunities, something that Kenny Atkinson discussed ad nauseum during the offseason. And I think that we have seen that really pay off for players, well, for both of them, to be honest. And Ty's ability to go out there and facilitate, his chemistry with the bigs is something that is very reminiscent of what we saw from Mack Strus in the bigs last year. They have a lot of chemistry being built between Ty and Evan and Jared, but specifically being able to rely on another creator out there and not having to have Caris LeVert be that guy, because Caris is another one who could do that. But I think that Ty has been more consistent in his ability to do so. So, yeah, I really love that. And I know Tom K makes a good point down here. The press and pressure seems to beat Cavs more than length. And I think we saw Indiana do that in back-to-back games. In game one, they started out the second half doing that. And then game two against them, they just did it the entire game. And the Cavaliers were able to overcome it. But I just think it comes down to the things that you're pointing to, right? Having another ball handler take the pressure off of them, being able to hit the bigs over the top. Kenny is masterful at adjusting on the fly. And I think that when I hear people discuss like, oh, we need a big wing, we need another big wing, we need to be able to compete with some of these teams out here that have more length than the Cavaliers, it doesn't necessarily piss me off because I understand where they're coming from, but I think it is overblown. I guess that's what I'll say.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. And if you want to look at your big wings, you got to kind of point to, I would say, Evan Mobley and Dean Wade. I would call those your wings.
Yep.
Like, those guys are big. They take those tasks on. And Evan, the way that he's playing this year, you basically can describe him as a small forward, even though he plays the 4 and the 5. So I think it is also overblown. And I just kind of want to go touch right back onto Ty Jerome. I thought this was interesting, having a conversation with someone the other day. Forget who it was. But they likened Jerome to almost like the Ricky Rubio from those early years. Obviously, Ty is taller. He's got a little bit more of a dependable shot. But having that kind of table setter out there with Donovan and with Darius really makes a difference. And also Ty's defense. We don't talk nearly enough about Ty's defense. The way that he's just able to kind of get his hands and pickpocket guys, whether it's from
a lot
behind.
of deflections out there too.
Yeah. Like, he is a weapon. And I think Kenny realizes that, and he's definitely a part of that 10-man rotation. And it's gonna get log jammed here for sure. And I'm sure that we'll kind of discuss it going forward too at some point.
Yeah, I am very curious to see as the roster returns back to full strength. And we've seen guys come back, although Evan, Caris, and Isaac have missed more games recently. But this team is close to being full strength, right? And with that being the case, I'm really, really interested to see what Kenny's going to do. But for the time being, one of the things that I'm also curious to see because we saw Max Strus make the first start of the season, his first start since last May, and I was pleasantly surprised with what I saw from him. He took 8 attempts, all 3 of them being from 3-point distance. He moved the ball. He was a connective tissue out there. But I guess my question is, do you think we can expect Max Strus to start moving forward, or is this truly more about Mobley missing time?
Oh, that's a good question. So I think Kenny doesn't live in absolutes like a lot of people do.
We do. I do.
I think he's matchup based. I really do. So it's either going to be Dean Wade or Max Strus at the 3, and I don't think that there's anything else. Like with Mobley out, that obviously changes things because obviously Vert was getting time too at the 3 in the past. Yeah. Like he's going to look at the matchup and decide from there what the best option is. I don't think that he's going to lock into one guy and that's what it is. Like, and he's really good at kind of piecing together rotations and sub patterns and stuff like that. I think is very big too. You talk about kind of how he's been able to manage guys' minutes. Mm-hmm. And I think the sub patterns have a lot to do with that. There is a kind of a rhythm he goes with. And doesn't really flinch from that rhythm or stray away from the process. He's process-oriented, as George Niang put the other day. So I don't feel like he's got to be like leached onto one particular person at the 3. You know it's your core 4 that are going to start. Who's that third guy? We've seen Dean there. We've seen Isaac there. We've seen Caris there. And we've seen Max there. We've seen Sam there.
Hell yeah, that was an odd one too. That was against Boston, if I'm not mistaken, of all teams, with Lath.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm sure you could see Jalen Tyson there at some point. So, like, you have your options to put at the 3 there. It's positionless basketball, but you have your core 4, and then you have who's that 5th guy out there with them. And I think they have more than enough versatility to be that way. It doesn't have to be this set in stone lineup every time. It's nice when you do that with chemistry, but this is one of those rare teams that it don't matter who you put out there with whoever. They all know how to play with each other. They know each other's strengths. They know each other's spots.
Right.
And they trust each other.
I think that you actually pointed this out rather recently. I think you actually prompted Max Strus to answer the question on whether or not, starting matters. And when I was listening to that interview, I was very, very interested to hear his response. And it sounds like all of these guys, they don't really care whether they're starting, whether they're coming off the bench. And I love that because it goes back to the vibes in the locker room that you were mentioning and just the chemistry with all of them. And it really is amazing to see all of them sacrifice in varying degrees. Max being the full-time starter last year and not really caring whether or not if he starts or comes off the bench this year. I think that's awesome. I think that shows you that these guys, they just really care about winning.
They do. And they understand what the goal is. And they're not afraid to let you know, too. I think that is, pun intended. Sorry.
Can't help ourselves.
I think that being genuine with one another, being genuine with the media, not being too coy, like they have been so transparent this year. And that I think has a lot to do with their success. Kenny's methods of communication have kind of trickled down into their methods of communication. And you can't replace chemistry that he came into. Like, JB Bickerstaff built a great foundation. He got them good places, a lot of unfortunate injury luck, and maybe just too simplistic on the offensive end. Kenny has now gotten them to play more advanced, more random on the offensive end instead of just high pick and roll, go and do your thing, and then figure it out. There are multiple cutters. There are different places that they are on the court, like playing 5 out. Have guys on the elbows and in the corners, plenty of space to operate, or you have an off-ball screen here at the top that frees up a shooter, and they play fast too, which if you play fast and you're able to also slow it down in the half court like they've done in the past 3-4 years, and that was their identity before, and then you have that middle ground pace, like those 3 gears, to be able to play those speeds, to be able to play multiple styles, and defensively to be as stout as they can be. They have not been in the last couple weeks or so. They have not been as good defensively, so that's why the zone's been coming into play, because Kenny's like, they're getting beat off the ball. Like, we've got to do something different. And that's part of Kenny's genius, obviously. But when you're able to play all those types of styles, that makes your whole team a weapon. And Kenny has really accentuated the strengths of his team instead of focusing on the weaknesses. And that's why they're at where they're at.
Even when they have struggled defensively, they have genuinely made it a point to try and adjust. I know over the past 10 games, they're like in the bottom 10 in terms of defensive rating. I think they're 22nd over their last 10 games or so, but they've been able to overcome that with some just crazy offensive numbers out there. And I know a big piece of that has been Darius Garland, man. This has been the season of the ages for Garland, and it's not like he's putting up like all-time stat lines out there, but a lot of that is tied to the load being lessened in terms of minutes out there. If you had to grade the season that he was having, what would you grade it?
I don't know how you don't give him an A either. The turnovers are down. The threes are up. The 3-point percentage is amazing. He's almost at a 50-40-90. It's like Tristan and Donovan said in one of those interviews that I recorded a couple weeks ago. The hell more do you want from him? This is what a point guard's supposed to look like. A modern point guard who is a scorer, who makes defenses have to read his eyes and his kind of actions. When he turns the corner, is he going to shoot a floater? Is he going to drop it off to a big? Is he going to lob it to a big? Is he going to stop his forward motion and pull up for a mid-ranger? He is the ultimate. It's almost like QB rap in football. Like, Darius is so good at making split-second reads and deciding what to do. And I think that decisiveness has also been why his turnovers have been down. Kenny Atkinson kind of mentioned the probe dribble and how he keeps possessions alive even if he has somewhere to pass the ball or he has an opening. Make sure it's the best one. You can kind of dribble around the floor, make sure that you're getting the best play and the most efficient look, whether it's for yourself, whether it's for a teammate. He's been so good at driving and kicking to the outside. Like, Donovan's made some really hard, some really bullet-like passes, but so has Darius. Darius has a little bit more touch on his sometimes. They're different in that aspect, and they're different playmaking, and Darius is the shiftiest and changing his speeds, so good on that. Defensively, playing the passing lanes and being able to switch onto bigger players because that's what the playoffs are going to see, and so he's ready for it. So I don't know what more you can ask for from DG. His touch has been phenomenal. His passing has always been phenomenal, and he's not dribbling himself into trouble. He's found a really good groove, and he's got space to work with, and he's making teams pay, man. Like, he should be an all-star. Like, there's no question about it. Like, he is having a 50-40-90 season, basically. Like, I don't know what more he could possibly do. And if anyone is skeptical, they're looking at what happened last year, which I think is unfair for multitude of reasons. We'll not get into them because we've talked about him like ad nauseum. But he has been one of the best point guards in the NBA, not just the Eastern Conference this season, and he deserves the love.
I just don't know how you can't put him in the All-Star game with what you have seen. The decision-making is up tremendously. It might be the best level that we have ever seen from Darius Garland. This man has 82 assists off of drives this year, the 2.84 assist to turnover ratio. He was clearly taking care of the ball. I know that was probably a big point of emphasis in him working on that over the offseason. He's absorbing contact. He's finishing at the rim very, very efficiently. He's scoring whenever the Cavaliers have called upon him to do that. And getting him more off-ball looks, I think that has really definitely helped his game out, as you've seen from the shooting percentages, him being in the 50-40-90 club. And it's crazy to me, Spencer, that they actually almost have two players in that club, in Ty Jerome and Darius Garland. And I really, really hope that Ty can get to that charity stripe so he can get those free throw attempts up enough to get to that 50-40-90 club as well. But I guess that kind of leads me to my next question, because it's not just Darius. Darius has been kind of the head of the snake this season. You can make an argument for Evan Mobley as well. But what is your gut feeling about how many players the Cavaliers sent to the All-Star game this year?
Realistically, or how many they should have?
Realistically. Well, give me both. Give me both.
Well, I understand, and I know this isn't fair, where Jarrett Allen's kind of production dipping at the beginning of the season, and obviously the last couple weeks has gone up, and it's been just like the JA we know. But when you have 4 guys in your core, someone's going to have to take...
Somebody got to sacrifice.
Someone's got to sacrifice. They all sacrifice for each other, too, by the way. Like, Donovan Mitchell is shooting less field goal attempts than he has in a long time. Like, everyone's kind of had that shot distribution and sacrificing for the team in that perspective. Jarrett, over the last couple weeks, and, over the last couple games now with Evan out, is continuing to be efficient, but also having more looks, more involvement in the offense, what have you. I think that they should get 3. I think they'll realistically get 2. And
who is that going to be?
And that is so hard to say, right? That is so hard to put 2 in. Like, I think you have to reward Darius.
Mm-hmm.
I think Darius gets in, and I think Donovan gets in. I don't know if they're going to put Evan in. I think they should put Evan in. Particularly because of his impact on both ends of the floor, his improvement on the offensive end, absolutely should be an all-star. No question. Does he get there is my question. Because there is this like middle ground area of the all-star game that we all know about.
Mm-hmm.
There's no more room for big men. It's front court, back court. And
wings are sexy.
Exactly. So it's a tough game. It's a tough game. I hope 2 get in. I really do. If they only have 1 going there and they have the best record in the Eastern Conference, then something has to be done about that process.
Call bullshit if that happens. It's rigged.
yeah. But realistically, I think they get 2. They definitely should have 3 to 4 at a minimum. I would understand from Jarrett Allen's perspective, because if you look at the counting numbers, they're not where they're supposed to be, or what they usually are supposed to be. But he is playing really well this year and is an all-star caliber player. It's so hard to put it because, like, I don't want to make it look like he's not doing well this year. Like, everyone on the team is playing well this year. It's hard to single people out, but just off of that, from the 3 that are going to get, that probably have the case to be there, versus Jarrett, who doesn't have the counting stats that people typically look at for an all-star game.
It just sucks, man. It sucks ass. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, because deep down in my heart, I know they're not all going to get in. I think they all have interesting cases, some of them more than others, obviously with Darius and Donovan. But Evan, man, being able to add the floor spacing element to his game, and it not being something that's like 1 to 2 attempts per game, and it full blown being like 3 to 4, sometimes 5 or 6. The man literally has 8 games in his career now with 3 or more triples. And then Jarrett, he's got 23 double doubles on the season. Like, I know that the counting stats are not going to do him justice, but the impact, man. And Evan has that same case for like impact on both ends. It sucks, but I think I could live if they get 2. I'm going to be really, really happy though if they get 3.
100%. I'm with you right there, and this is where you have the old argument whether the counting stats on worst teams versus who's playing winning basketball, what equates to an all-star, and that's what makes this so difficult. And also, fans are drawn naturally to flashy game. Mm-hmm. And it's not, I mean, they don't see enough Darius Garland if they don't think he's flashy. He's flashy and he's efficient and he's really good. Donovan, same thing. But, like, I don't know. You saw that in the first voting returns that Jordan Poole was ahead of Darius Garland. They're like, okay, you know the way that this is going to be.
LaMelo Ball being as far as he is. And that's no disrespect to either of these guys. But, I mean, we're talking about impact on winning here. And
yep.
I don't know. It's just, it sucks to see. But I'll be happy if we at least get a couple of these guys. And I guess my next question for you is one that doesn't really have anything to do with Cleveland. Well, it might in the future. but because of the larger implications of it. But I'm sure you saw what happened the other day. Phoenix. Do you think with the picks that the pick that they just sent out, do you think that they are angling for a larger fish?
I don't know how. That's a good question. Jimmy was wearing shoes too. I don't know if you saw those. They were purple and orange. And
Always trying to send a statement.
Had the color scheme. His hair was purple a few weeks ago too. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. They have definitely some issues over there right now, and they did a good thing, like going to trade for Nick Richards and trying to get some more beef in the middle was a good move. Like, I think that's solid. I really like to plug my own work. Like, I did an interview with Ryan Dunn about his rookie season and how he's gained the trust to be in the starting lineup, and basically took that spot from Bradley Beal, which is crazy. But giving him some really good minutes. Over at rg.org. Look for that later this week. But I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. They're 500 in the middle of the season. It's not going the way they thought it would. You got a new coach. Obviously, Jimmy's pining for a bigger role. That's the target, I would assume. So I mean, it makes sense if they had more picks. And it's funny that the Jazz traded that away. They're already kind of conceding.
Yeah.
The Cavs are going to be too good. The Cavs are going to be too good. Here, you guys have this. You guys have this, because the less favorable is what is going to end up being the picks. So,
Spencer, if that doesn't tell people that Kobe Altman had a vision and that he had the foresight, some of this might be luck, but he had the foresight to understand what he was actually shipping out with those picks to acquire Donovan. I don't know what will. I don't know. I really hope people have done a complete 180 in terms of their opinion on Kobe Altman, because at one point in time, they were ready for him to go right alongside JB.
There was a really cool graphic that the NBA's social account posted, like how the Cavs were built. And I just thought it was really cool seeing like the acquisition process. Like you say, like this was a draft pick. This was an acquisition over a trade. This was a move in free agency, and like just showing how it happened. Like Sam Merrill, number 1 pick in the G League draft 2 or 3 years ago. Like that is really cool to kind of watch and look at how this has come along. And yeah, he deserves a lot of credit. It started, I go over this all the time, and when people were killing me online for talking about how the moves he made in 2018 in the second half of LeBron's season to kickstart the quote-unquote rebuild that we are now 7 years into now, post-LeBron, believe it or not, 7 years into. And it started there. It started with those moves post-deadline to get, I still remember the quote to this day, get fountains in there, not drains. Like that was one of the craziest quotes I've ever heard. But it did. It started with like, the Jordan Clarksons and the Rodney Hoods and the Larry Nance Jr. And it just kind of kept going. And then it turns into, assets that turn into Dellavedova. And then like the picks that are in that turn into, like it just kind of trickles down effect. Like I wish I had the web of moves that had all kind of trickled from that. Mm-hmm. And, you look at the coup that he made when in the James Harden trade, where he got Jared Allen and Taurean Prince for Dante Exum. And then it turns into, you go out and get Caris LeVert for Ricky Rubio, who was out for the season. And then just like, he is really calculated about his moves. He doesn't make too many midseason moves that shake up a team, especially when they're contending. He's an offseason guy. He makes his splashes in the offseason. You could look at Lauri Markkanen being dealt for and really revitalizing his career here, by the way. And then, that turns into the Donovan move the following summer. And, you go out and get Max Strus and George Niang in the summer of 2023. Like, those are the moves that he's made over time that have really built a culture around here. And it's a good mixture. It's a good mixture of early 20s guys with still young guys who are in their prime or entering their prime, if you look at kind of the age mix in the locker room. And then you have like one old head in there, and that's Tristan. So, like, it's a good mix. It's a good mix of guys, and I think he's done a tremendous job of assembling the roster and deserves credit for sure. But he's going to be judged on the playoff record, and that's how the entire organization is going to be judged on. You can't fast forward until April, though. You have to talk about it now. So for now, yeah, you're absolutely like in the way that he's done it.
I think that just to see, and that really contextualizes it. Yeah, like when you just kind of think back about all the moves that have led to another move and another move and another move, it all
Dellavedova for George Hill, like these are things that I think about all the time. Like he makes these like subtle kind of under the radar trades that may not look like
really
but
the payoff.
Bring in the second round picks,
line.
yeah, like and then the second round picks turn into something else, like like. I know it didn't really work out in their favor, but like second round picks turned into Kevin Porter Jr. in one of those drafts, like, which at the time like looked like a crazy good move. Like, so, and there's been some misses along the way. Like, let's not, he hired John Beeline, like he had, Dylan Windler was one of his other picks when apparently there was a discussion between him and Keldon Johnson at that number, and he went with Dylan Windler because Beeline wanted Windler. There's been some rough patches, but JB was the right move. He still was a very important cog to this, like
credit to him in Detroit, by the way.
Oh, a lot of credit to him in Detroit, man. Get some vets in there. Got Cade Cunningham playing the best ball of his career. I've really enjoyed watching him. Don't want to get too sidetracked, but yeah, huge credit to JB. And he was huge for this team. And he's still like, his impact will be felt, especially if they get to that next echelon, which I think they're very capable of. Kenny's just in the lab mixing potions up now. That's all it is. That's all it is.
I think that's an excellent way to end the pod, man. Kenny in the cab. That's a Kenny in the lab mixing up potions. That is a good visual for some people to think about, because that literally explains it with some of the lineups that we've seen this year, some of the adjustments that we have seen in game, which has been such a turning point for this team as a whole. But before we get out of here, man, go ahead and plug all your stuff.
Yeah, man, no problem. I am at Spin Davies on both Twitter/X/Instagram. So you can follow me there. I do work for the Cavs on SI, as Mack just mentioned. So I'm shooting post-game interviews for our YouTube channel, Cleveland Cavaliers on SI. Please subscribe, comment, rate, like. Do the same for this channel. We're trying to help each other out. I think that our video content is the best out there. And I'm obviously a little biased, but I put together supercuts that I post on Twitter and Instagram pretty much every day when they're at home and they're not on the road. If they're on the road, then I have to do something else. But so make sure to go check that out. We also have our own podcast, Courtside with Cavs on SI, me and Spencer German. Unfortunately, it hasn't been as much as we'd have liked it to be at this point. But that's because Spencer covers every single team known to man in Ohio. So it's a little bit tougher to do it more than once a week. But once he's out of that and done with Ohio State and the Browns and the Guardians, all these other teams that he's got, he's probably covering some lacrosse team, field hockey, I don't know. But he is a busy man. He also has a toddler and just got a new car. So hasn't been as much as we'd like. But once he's back on track, we will be getting to you at Courtside with Cavs on SI. We're on Apple, Spotify, and wherever you listen to podcasts, as well as YouTube. So make sure to interact with that show. For myself, also do work around the NBA. This is going to be a mouthful, but rg.org is where my long-form features go. I just talked to Mark Williams of the Charlotte Hornets, rising big man, hasn't really had any kind of opportunity because of injury history, but man, is he killing it right now for Charles Lee and the boys in Charlotte. So make sure to check that out. Talk to him, talk to Lee, and then I talked to Taj Gibson about how special the talent Mark is. The next day, I released one on Ben Shepherd. Talked to him when they were in town against Cleveland, and talked about his kind of oblique injury and also sacrificing from being the guy in college to relegating yourself to a role-playing type of situation in Indiana. Because in the NBA, you know how it goes, Mac. Like, you're not the guy when you get there if you're a rookie. So, like, It takes a lot of sacrifice in that respect.
Oh, yeah.
And then thirdly, at Babcock Hoops, where I do my NBA draft profiles, I just talked to Alex Toohey of the Sydney Kings. He's an NBL Next Star. So any of you Aussie fans out there or people that just like overseas prospects, please check that out. It's basically a book. It's over 4,000 words. Toohey gave me some really good stuff. Chris Pongrass, the CEO of the Kings, who used to be director of basketball operations for the Grizzlies, gave me some really good stuff. And Xavier Cooks, who used to play for the Washington Wizards at the tail end of 2023, who is also a teammate of Toohey's, gave me some really good stuff. So enjoyed putting that together. That was really weighing on my mind. So I'm glad that I got those 3 articles out of the way last week. Got another one coming up for you on RG here soon, talking to Ryan Dunn, as I just mentioned earlier. So that's just a little glimpse of what I do. And this is the world of sports media and trying to staying afloat and in the public eye in this space.
Well, you heard it, man. This dude he's doing everything right now. The one thing that I'll point out, make sure you check all that other stuff out. But the one thing that Spencer really, really is good about, really the best in the biz, is the post-game interviews. This dude is just so insightful, asks some of the best questions that we've seen out there. Shout out to Mike McNuggets out there as well doing that. But yeah, make sure you check out all of Spencer's work. As I always tell you guys, if you'd like to reach out, you know how you can. It's Cavalier_pod on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and more. If you'd like to be added to the It's Cavalier Discord chat, you know what to do. Leave a rating, leave a review, send a screenshot of said review to itscavalier53@gmail.com, and I will send you said invite. If you're watching over on X, like I know a lot of y'all are right now, do your boy a favor, head on over to YouTube, hit that like button, subscribe if you're not yet a subscriber to the It's Cavalier podcast, and hit that notification bell so you know when I'm going live. Go Cavs.